But anyway, so thank you to the panelists. We want to make this interactive if possible. So if you have questions and you want to interject, please feel free to do so. We will have a bit of a discussion between the panelists to kick off. I think some of them are bursting to say some things about routing, but you're going to have to listen to me first and hear about what this initiative is, some of the things we're trying to achieve with this. So yeah, this is basically about what we call MANRS. It's an initiative that ISOCers have been involved with for about 2 years, with the aim of improving global routing security and resilience. Now, this is something that's being led by ISOC, but you'll actually see from the branding there's no ISOC branding here. We have our own unique MANRS branding, and that's because we want this to be a community initiative, and this is something that the community is involved with. This is something the community leads. We're just here to help facilitate this process. So, internet routing. So I think we're in a pretty technical audience here, so I think we probably pretty much all understand how routing works. But there are about 53,000 networks that participate in the global internet, or in the global internet. Around 21,000 sort of sub-networks, with about 7,000 participating in the core network. As I'm sure you know, these networks generally use BGP to announce the networks that they know about, and they receive route announcements from connected networks. This is used to build a routing table, which is used to then select a route to send a packet from one place to another. We know that. As you also know, these networks are identified by AS numbers, which uniquely identify them to all the other routers. So that's the underlying basis. Now, the problem. In fact, I think there's a slide. No, problem. Yeah. BGP is very much based on trust. And although this is not completely the case at the moment nowadays, but there's basically no inherently built-in validation of the legitimacy of the routing updates. This chain of trust spans the whole globe, but you're also suffer from the problem of there's a sort of lack of reliable resource data. So who do the networks belong to? Who is responsible for these? Are these people to be trusted? And this is the basic weakness of the routing system. And what has happened, we know, of course, the famous YouTube outage when Pakistan took YouTube off the internet. They were trying to block YouTube and had the unintended consequence of actually taking off YouTube from much of the internet. That was back in 2008. Been various other incidents over that time, some better known than others, but then there was another very big one in 2010 when China Telecom misannounced some routes, and that diverted traffic from a number of major ISPs into China. Whether this was malicious or intent, this is perhaps unclear, but the consequence was the traffic was going to the wrong place. And then, more recently, there was the Iranian telecom that was attempting to block some, shall we say, nefarious websites with some slightly dubious content, which they didn't want people in Iran to see. But again, that had the consequence of a number of adjacent networks had their traffic black holed into somewhere in Iran, presumably, and also, with Iran being a transit point for a number of networks in Central Asia as well, this was a problem. So that was perhaps the most recent, I think that was earlier this year. So what's sort of behind these incidents? Well, there's sort of three main reasons. We won't go into this in too much detail because we want some time for the panel. But perhaps the main one is the IP prefix hijack, where this is misannouncing of route prefixes, which means that packets end up being forwarded to the wrong part of the internet. This may be for denial of service reasons, it may be for traffic interceptions or some sort of impersonation, various reasons. Very similar is route leaks, similar to very similar to prefix hijacking, but usually not malicious, and maybe down to the famous fat finger syndrome, or just general misunderstanding of how routing works. And then finally, you've got the IP address spoofing, so the creation of IP packets with false source addresses, with the aim primarily of, well, it's a primary cause of reflection DDoS attacks. So other solutions? Well, yes, there are, and we're going to hear about this, I think. I had the discussions in the corridor, but one way, for example, is prefix and AS path filtering. We've just started in the last few years to have RPKI, so cryptographic verification of number resources. You've got internet routing registries. Perhaps more recently, and probably just about coming into being a standard, is the BGP-SEC. There's a RFC awaiting publication as we speak. It may even be published as of now. It wasn't last week when I checked, but there's maybe some kind of a lot of discussion about whether BGP-SEC is the way forward, whether this is scalable, but it's something that has been touted as a possible solution to some of these problems. You've got WHOIS information that you can look up, routing registries and peering databases. We heard a talk on that yesterday in SAFNOG. But what all of this has in common is very limited deployment, plus the fact there's a lack of reliable and verified data. So why is this a problem? Well, fundamentally, from a routing perspective, securing one's own network, while this is a nice socially responsible thing to do, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't really make it more secure. You need to rely on someone else doing the same thing. So you need everyone, or a majority of networks, to collaborate in this process to make it effective. So what we're trying to do here is, can we develop some sort of industry standard or cultural norm that responsible ISPs and network operators will subscribe to and buy into, with a view to sort of improving the overall security of the routing system. So MANRS is an attempt to do this. It's a baseline that we've developed. And the aim is to set some minimum parameters for some of the things that we feel that network operators should be working towards. We call it MANRS, Mutually Agreed Norms for Routing Security. And there's fundamentally 4 concrete actions that we would like adherents to subscribe to. But the aim is not for this to be some sort of top-down imposed solution. We want this to be a collaborative initiative from network operators, and responsible operators will participate in this and contribute and direct and guide this code. So the 4 actions, again, we don't need to go through this in great depth. One's filtering, so preventing the propagation of incorrect routing information. Anti-spoofing, that's action number 2, preventing traffic with spoofed source IP addresses. Number 3 is more of a soft action. It's actually coordination, so improving contact information, actually being responsive to requests for help when there are issues. So that's more of a human resource action. And then number 4 is global validation. So this is actual technical solutions to some of these problems. So one would be RPKI, for example, validation of routing information. So I already mentioned that this is not just a document, it's a commitment, and the idea is when you sign up to the MANRS document, you become a participant in the process as well, and a member in effect. So there's been a growing list of participants. This is pretty much in the order that they signed up, so there's no favoritism given to KPN. I think they would just happen to be the first that signed, just to be clear on that. Yeah, I can't see anything in South Africa at the moment, but I'll come to that. It's been growing. We had a good first year, a lot of sign-ups. It steadily grew up until 2017, where we've actually hit a bit of a wall now. So I'll come to that, and this is actually part of why we're having the panel here. Ideally, we would like to get to 7,000. That's the sort of core participants on the, or the number of networks participating in the sort of core of the internet. But dreaming, maybe. So, MANRS participants in Africa. So I counted just over 1,500 ASNs assigned in the Afrinic region, and 443 are in South Africa. And there are precisely 2 in the whole of Africa, ASNs participating in MANRS, and they are both in South Africa. So well done to Workonline Communications. Hello, Ben. And Nor Data Networks are the others. What I should mention is, one of the requirements is to sign up to 2 of the, to be a MANRS participant, you should implement at least 2 of the 4 actions. So you don't have to do all of the actions, but at least 2 of those. One of those should be the coordination function. But as you can see, Workonline, they subscribe to all of it, nor 3 actions. Well done. Okay, so as you can see, participation is quite low in Africa. I think that's the point here. And how do we bridge this gap? We're going to have a discussion about that, so I don't want to talk too much. But, one thing we do want to do is try to sell this a bit more and get, some of the people in this room maybe, or some people who are actually already MANRS participants to, spread the word and encourage some sign-ups to help build this community. One thing that we have done, we have produced a BCOP, a MANRS BCOP, best current operational practices, to help provide some guidance on how to technically implement some of these actions that I've mentioned. We are going to be working, or we are working on a training and certification program, kind of based on the BCOP document. That's not quite there yet, but that's in work in progress. And we're also looking at having targeting IXPs they obviously have user communities and members. We're looking at working with the IXPs to help bring some of their members into this initiative. Okay, so how to sign up? If you're interested, there's a URL, information about what it involves, how to sign up, some of the things that we might ask you to do. And we sort of encourage people to announce the fact they're participating in MANRS and use the logo and so on. Okay, that's it from me. So we can move to the panel. I don't know, do we have a roving microphone? Maybe I can take this and... So, just to introduce the panelists, so we have here Ben Maddison, Workonline Communications, Desigan Pillay from Internet Solutions, and then Saul Stein from eNetworks. So, what I would like to kick things off, I would like to ask, and in no particular order, but maybe starting with Ben, as you were the first to agree to be on the panel, so I guess you've got something to say. What are your experiences with some of the problems that we discussed with routing and some of the issues you've seen, and what practical issues or problems have you experienced on your network and in the real world? So we've talked about some of the well-known problems with YouTube and Pakistan and Iran, but have you seen any of these issues in South Africa or in Africa?
Yeah, so I'd like to stick to the regional stuff.
Sure.
Because, yeah, I mean, we quote-unquote saw all of those incidents. I am only aware of one malicious hijack that's taken place in the last several years on the continent. Most of the other problems we see are accidental. But they generally, so the things that affect us operationally fall into kind of 2 categories. We have a very, very hard time trying to protect ourselves from other routing errors in our kind of local, our local neighborhood. because of difficulties getting sufficient information out of our peers in order for us to be able to build filters to protect ourselves. And that adds colossal amounts of admin overhead to our peering management, to our network operations, to troubleshooting for customers. It also means that quite often we are dropping what would otherwise be the best path to a particular destination. And so we quite often see customer traffic taking a longer route because we're unable to validate what would otherwise be a best shortest path. The other category of things that we see quite often, and this is particularly a problem with, in South Africa in particular, with the mid-sized networks that are beginning to transition from having been a stub network for a long time to beginning to offer transit to other ASs for the first time. They don't have the policy mechanisms in place to protect against the leakage of dual-homed customer prefixes. So a common scenario is one of our peers will we will learn a more specific from a particular customer that happens to be multi-home to a peer. We'll advertise it to that peer. They will learn it, but it will hit their prefix filters, and they'll be filtering on prefix only, and so that will leak, and they'll end up leaking a transit announcement for us, which is problematic because I size my network based on my network, not on what I'm guessing is in my peers' networks. And that is, first and foremost, it's an education problem. And it's one of the reasons that I spend quite so much time on this topic, is because our lives would be simplified dramatically if we were all operating to a kind of a mutually understood baseline. And to be honest, I could care less whether that involves anyone signing up for MANRS or not. If they're doing the stuff, it makes my life easier when I'm selecting who I interact with and who I peer with, if they're on the list.
Same question.
Same question, okay. Well, I have to agree with Ben. I mean, obviously we get a lot of these coming in from our customers, a lot of prefixes that are, not meant for that AS. We do get that, and we filter them out as best we can within our environment, within our network, so it doesn't reach other customers, so it doesn't reach other peers, and so on. But it is difficult, and we face a lot of challenges with that. It's a lot of management, as Ben has said. We also face the same challenges. But I think we have sufficient policies in place to protect us, protect internet solutions. We also try to assist our clients wherever we can to guide them in the right way on how to advertise their prefixes, how to correctly originate these prefixes. So all of that makes a difference, and I think that will make a difference to the community as a whole. So that helps.
Thanks.
I'm going to answer that question in two parts. One is external, one's internal. Externally, I think the biggest problem is we're getting a lot of, with XZAs, NAP, a lot of people are starting to peer, which is fantastic. It really is. But a lot of people think that peering with the root server is it. You've done that, you don't have to worry about anything, and hey, it just works. I've suddenly got like thousands of peers. What people don't realize is, as we've mentioned, you've got to have filters, you've got to protect yourself. And I think that's what MANRS is driving, obviously. But so, as I say, once you've got filters in place, you better protect it, but it's not the panacea for everything. I think what Ben and Desigan have spoken about is, it's fine for customers that you're doing BGP with, but what about the customers that you're not, who are just got a default route? They can send you anything. So what I think what's often forgotten about is, yes, we're talking about protecting the border here, but what about protecting from your customer side? RFC 1918 address space, that's fully routable in a default gateway sense. It's going to go nowhere, but if someone sends you a 1918 address from their network, and they've just got a default gateway to you, and static route back to them, it's going to go into your network unless you're actually actively blocking those kind of things. I think that's something also that needs to be addressed.
Sure. So Ben, you were sort of shaking your head or nodding your head. I'm not sure when the RFC 1918. You want to make a comment on that?
Yeah. So anti-spoofing filtering is hard for us because we're a transit network, and it's really all we do. And so, is it number two? I forget I struggle to keep them straight.
Yeah.
Number two talks about anti-spoofing. It talks about it specifically in the context that you just spoke about, where you've got a single-homed stub customer. If you are doing that on anything approaching a decent modern router today, URPF is there and URPF is your friend. That is a scenario, that particular scenario. Spoofing is a big problem, and it's what enables a large number of the volumetric DDoS categories that we've seen over the last few years. And in some contexts, that's hard. For networks that are offering, kind of direct internet access type services to single-homed customers that are just pointing a default at them, switching on URPF everywhere should be harmless and very, very straightforward to manage, and will get rid of a huge quantity of that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, just to touch on a point you made earlier, you said it's about education, part of this, and ensuring that people, network operators or network engineers understand how to configure things or knowing what they're doing. Do you think that this is something that MANRS could help with, or is this something that, what's the solution, the best way to do this? Because, we've been working with the internet now for 30 years. BGP's been around 30 years, I guess, and seeing similar problems, the same mistakes being made. What would you maybe see as being a way of improving this situation, improving the education, improving other technical solutions that should be implemented to solve this problem? I mean, I know you've got RPKI, for example, but
yeah. So a few times this year I've presented from exactly the same slide deck that you just used. And when I get to the bit that says, oh, there are solutions to it, I kind of modify that bit because there's kind of solutions to it. There are chunks of it that you can kind of cut off and deal with using technology today, and there are bits that just frankly we don't have a solution designed around. Where a technical solution exists, but it needs to be implemented by more than one autonomous network, that comes down to community for me, and that's why my participation in MANRS is. And as I say, I could frankly care less whether it's MANRS or something else. But if operators, particularly within regions, aren't talking to each other about this sort of stuff and sharing experience and sharing how they go about things, that cost accrues to everyone in that ecosystem. And that's kind of what I'm hoping comes out of today is we, as I say, have a problem in the topological center of the internet in Southern Africa, whereby, and this is a problem that for the most part doesn't exist in other parts of Europe. You see it in Asia, in other parts of the world. You see it in Asia a little bit, but it's pretty much a solved problem in Europe and the States. The ability, and this goes to action 4 of MANRS, the ability for me to get sufficient information from the networks that I either peer with, or I take transit services from, or I provide transit services to, getting sufficient information from them to validate routing information at the edge, whatever that means for me. In my case, that means building prefix filters mostly, is hard work. And to a very, very large extent in South Africa, that relies on a massive flood of emails on an almost daily basis, which drive me up. I'm going to do my best not to swear on this panel, but it might slip out.
We're all about adults. We're all adults.
Yeah, but it's fucking irritating. And it's particularly fucking irritating when you've gone to the time and expense to build automated systems that can do this stuff for you. And I mean, I'd like to, again, this is something that I've done before, I'd like to again make a standing offer that any decent size operator in the room who is announcing to me more than a half a dozen prefixes, I'm probably filtering some of them out. Come to me, we can talk about it, I can give you running code, I can tell you how to deploy it, it will save you time, it will save me time, and it'll make the internet better. And there are some people looking at me nervously. I think maybe I won't name names today, maybe next time. So the worst culprit of the transit-free networks in South Africa, i.e. the networks that are transit-free within South Africa, not global. There are no global tier ones that are from South Africa. Of those networks, the worst culprit is Neotel. 3844 is not blameless, but they're not as bad as Neotel. At any given time, I am probably filtering out 40-odd% of the prefixes that get announced to me by 36937. And the fundamental problem, and this is something that I've been trying to address with them for the better part of 2 years now, they do not have an AS set in any mirrorable registry that contains a list of who their customers are. I can't build filters on that basis. About a year and a half or so ago, we resorted to building such a list for them and maintaining an AS object on their behalf of customers that we could observe being transited by them. But that, obviously, we don't know when Neotel turns up a new customer. That information gets out of date very rapidly. The customers themselves are not, they're not, encouraged by Neotel to maintain root objects for their stuff. So that object has very, very poor coverage. And I think last time I checked, we're talking about something like 300 or 400 prefixes. And that's just, it's so easy to fix. It just guys, just get on with it.
I think, sorry, Ben, I know a lot of those spams come from me as well, so a lot. But yeah, I mean, with that, I think managing your AS set, as you said, it's important. It's important to our peers, it's important to the internet, and maybe we need to get a workshop going, teach people how to do that, how to use it properly, make use of it so that it benefits everyone. That could be something that's beneficial to everyone. You as the person with the the issue at hand, or the person on the other side of the fence. So there's options out there. There definitely is.
We're a unique industry. You speak to accountants, they charge for everything. They make a phone call, they charge. They write a letter, they charge. They read an email, they charge you for it. An accountant of mine, a friend of mine, couldn't believe that we have organizations like this and conferences like this where people actually give their time and experience, and we're all competitors, and yet we'll sit and chat and offer free code. To some vacations, it's absurd. But I think that's it. It's about the community and about educating the community and also knowing who your peers are. Knowing, I think it's number 3 on MANRS, is being able to communicate, but not only having access to PeeringDB and knowing that, okay, this is the email address, actually knowing it's Ben or it's Desigan, that when I've got a problem, I can actually get hold of you. I've got you on Skype. And it happened to us a couple of years ago. There was when the NTP attack took place. Filters don't help you because it was UDP, so you've already used all the bandwidth coming into your network. I needed to get to, IS was my stream at the time, and say, guys, please block this at your international borders. Straight away, I didn't have to go through a help desk. It was done. Same with MWeb at the time. UDP attacks, it's wasted bandwidth. There's nothing you can do about it. I think that's it. It's knowing the community, getting together, and that's where the training session comes in. You're doing the training, you're meeting, you're talking shit, and, well, BGP and stuff, other things as well. But you're getting to know each other. So, yes, you might not become good buddies, but at least you know who the person is. You know who the person, you've got getting their Skype details, you're having an open chat with them. And I think that's the key.
Sure. Does anyone want to ask any questions from the floor? I think yes. I think Machuki, you were first, then yeah.
Michuki Mwangi, Internet Society. So the points you raise, I find them quite interesting, and I'd like to ask this question. Ben, you see, without people doing the filtering, using things like communities, etc., it's a pain for you to do anything. But for the person who is not doing it, they don't have any network challenges per se if they haven't done it, or they are not conscious of those challenges. And so what I tend to see is, if you have the platforms where you're able to show how your network is causing me so much headaches by not doing the right thing, would that then trigger that initiative that, they need to start doing something? It's like, hey, I will send you 100,000 prefixes just one day and see how you deal with that. And this comes from some of my personal experiences when going out doing workshops around the continent, where you ask people, how many of you are doing communities just on the networks? The first thing they look at you and say, what are communities? Oh, and this is how you build them. But why do I need to do it? And then start explaining to them what is routing policy, peering policy, etc. And then they start understanding, but it still takes some time for them to see why it is important for them. And maybe the platforms where you get to share what pain points you see from your point of view as another operator in the same market or in the same region, why it's useful for you. Would sort of trigger them to actually see the value of implementing this.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And I think that, so most of the issues that we see, they're certainly present on our peers' networks. They may or may not see them. They may not get a support call or, see it in their log somewhere, or, notice traffic hairpinning through Europe when there's a perfectly good peering sitting in Johannesburg. For the most part, we are talking about people that should know better. I don't begrudge a lack of experience and information on the part of someone who's been doing this for 5 minutes and is operating a smallish network. I'm more than happy to lend a hand to whoever, but it's much less begrudgedly if it's someone who I would expect less well-manneredness from. But you're right. So one of the things I'm currently writing is an extension to our internal peering tool that will be publicly accessible and will allow our peers to see what we're filtering out from them. But I resent every single line of code that I'm having to write for that tool.
Do you want to ask your question?
Hi, my name's Nishal. Internet public servant, devil's advocate, and you can call it anything else you want after that. So I have a few comments. Firstly, AS20928 is not from South Africa. It looked funny when you mentioned it.
It may be a typo.
Egyptian ISP. Secondly, why do I need a noddy badge for doing the right thing? I'm not sure, because I'm not a network operator, so maybe times have changed since I last had enable on a network. But when I did run a network, we pretty much did all of this. And I'm not sure what the value of a marketing sticker on my website that appears to be copyrighted to the Internet Society. I'm not sure what value that's going to add to me. And then, as a second part of that, I agree with pretty much everything all of you have said regarding training and education and all the things that need to happen to get your community to work with and react to network security attacks or the potential for network security attacks. Because, as you know, we're involved in that sort of things as a community. So if only there was a friendly exchange point operator that did this stuff free of charge in your community for you. But again, I'm not sure how that ties back to the topic here, which is manners, because you're talking to me like it seems to me that you're talking about community building, you're talking about training and educating the community, and you're talking about getting them to do the right thing, which is well documented in 100 places. Actually, it is 100 odd places. Not sure how this ties to that. I have more questions. You want me to stop before you want me to keep going?
Well, the first one you spoke about was why do you get a badge for it, or why do you need to get a badge for it? Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's a way to show other people that you are responsible. A responsible use.
So that's what I thought you were going to say. Sorry to cut you short. And that's really useful if it actually meant something, because there was this, like hi, I'm a CCIE. If you thought a CCIE meant something, or. Like
Nishal, as I think you said, you haven't had enable for a long time, but things, and as much as
I teach. I may not have an enable, but I teach it in various communities, and I'm uncertain what value that brings to you.
What I think is people out there have changed, regrettably.
Do you?
Change is inevitable, but I think people do want that little nolly badge. I think for a lot of people out there today, that naughty badge is important. For the
Do you have the naughty badge? No,
No,
you
I don't.
because you're not Ben, who is the only network in Southern Africa that has it. So do you make decisions based on whether or not other networks have or do not have that naughty badge? And I know the answer. You don't need to answer. Okay. So I don't see what you're saying. You seem to be contradicting yourself.
Okay, so I think this answer varies for different operators. But so recently there was some market research done by the ISOC guys around what this means in terms of a business case. The people in rooms like this, for the most part, and then this is why I refer generically to this topic as preaching to the choir, because usually you're preaching to the choir, because the people who are sitting in this room are generally not the problem. Some of them, like Andrew, are the problem, but you know, thankfully, as soon as you get to the mic, I'm going to take lots of cucks. So, I'm just getting in while I can. For a large number of operators out there, the decision whether or not to take engineering resources and put them into a project like deploying RPKI, whether or not you think it's a good idea, which I'm not entirely sure that it is. But as an example, putting them into a project like that is a management decision, not an engineering decision in a lot of organizations. And in order to get that management buy-in, you need to those organizations need to show how it impacts either their product quality or indirectly or directly their revenue base. And the outcome of the market research that was done seems to suggest, actually much more strongly than I was expecting it to, that there is a lot of perceived value in a public statement of support for these kind of principles amongst those guys' potential customers.
Okay, so again, that's what I expected you to say, except that when there's, and we spoke about this the other day, when there is a transgressor, and all that happens is, oh, well, you don't deserve the naughty badge anymore, then the community starts to lose faith in these things. And that's what I'm trying to get to, really, that if you start putting up these badges and people start to say, oh, wow, this is something that I need to have, like the CCIE initially, which was a naughty badge of distinct merit, and then you found out that there were organizations that were literally just feeding people answers so they can get and split. What's the value of this thing? But again, that's rhetorical. I did introduce myself as devil's advocate. Yeah. I'm going to hog the mic because it's Andrew behind me. This is a concern. If all of you are still talking about RFC 1918, I'd like to welcome you to the 21st century. You should be talking about at least 6890 or 8190 because it means you completely left out V6. So Ben, I know, is doing that. But to the rest of you out there, please don't refer to 1918 anymore. Join us in the 21st century. And the last comment I have was about what you said about denial of service attacks. The vast majority of denial of service attacks these days are not spoofed. The data that we have, the data that the internet has, shows unequivocally that the largest attacks are not from spoof sources. They're taking advantage of, resources that are available on the internet, the vulnerable webcams, baby cams, whatnot, and all of that. Is this actually making a difference to that? The title said something at the start, 2 years of good manners. So what data do you have to show that it's contributed to any measure of success?
I have a number of problems with this deck. One of them is that it seems to overstate, for reasons that I don't want to kind of try and second guess, how useful this stuff can be in combating distributed denial of service attacks. That is not what it's for first and foremost. Insofar as it makes that stuff harder, then great. But you're absolutely right that there are multiple whole classes of attack that you can mount without spoofing anything, and you can do so within a completely manners compliant network, in practice and in theory. So I think it's a mistake trying to lump all network security issues into one bucket and try and solve them all simultaneously and argue against one because it doesn't solve the other. But I think it's equally a mistake to talk about a solution to one as if it's a panacea to all the others as well. And I think that's something that the manners community has been guilty of over the last couple of years in respect of the DDoS problem.
I think, just to interject, that to be fair, I don't think we or the manners community is or shouldn't be promoting this as a panacea to network security. I really don't think that it's just some of the things that can be done to improve the situation. I think that's what it's aimed at. But anyway, it's not about me. It's about Andrew. I will come to you, and I know you'll probably be sitting there for a long time now. But
no, actually, I'm going to be pretty brief. So my first comment is, right at the beginning, when you were talking, you referred to two people who've signed this document. We haven't. But it creates a misconception that there aren't people out there who are following these principles without signing the document. There are reasons for not signing this document, and we can go into those offline. There are various reasons. But I do think that you need to also give credit where credit is due for the people who are following these principles who won't sign the document for other reasons. The reality is that you can't say that just because I haven't signed an ISOC document doesn't mean that I have any manners, because my manners aren't defined by ISOC manners. Sorry, but they aren't. You know what I mean? And that really worries me about this, because it creates a false impression in the market, you know. There may be very, very good reasons. And so that's my one concern. The next thing that I wanted to say is, I've heard a lot of bashing of a particular orange ASN. And so I'm here at this microphone to say this. I am now committing to personally taking this on. My Skype address is publicly available. My email address is out there. You may contact me and I may tell you to please log a ticket, because I need a ticket to track issues to make sure that they are dealt with. But I will personally commit to taking this on and seeing what we can do about it. We all know that it takes time to fix these things. You know, it's not easy when you're merging organizations. But no, I mean, you know, when you're merging organizations, you've got a lot of challenges, etc. But I will take this on and I'll address it with the people who are running those routers, etc. And we will sort it out. So contact me. My email address is available. If you don't have it, just grab me and I'll give you the Skype address. I'll give you the email address. I'll give you my phone numbers and we'll sort it out. So that's my commitment. And I wanted to make that very clear so that we can all stop jumping on the big orange ASN. Thank you.
And that's awesome, Andrew. And maybe if everyone does initiatives like that, we can clean up things. You know, maybe that's what MANRS is trying to do. I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way. It's maybe it's an alternative. You know, people in rooms like this need to make that difference.
I just have one question. I want to know where Andrew's manners are defined.
Okay, sorry you've had to wait a while.
Not a problem. Sorry, Anthony. I'm the friendly guy in the room. So just as a comment quickly, so I'm a small ISP, and well, actually a big ISP, small ISP that thinks it's a big ISP, and I have some manners, but not all manners, and I've only been doing it for 5 minutes, so maybe you can help us. No, the question is it an opportunity to, please don't shoot me in the foot, okay? Don't take me out when we walk outside there. But as an option to produce or add these sort of manner principles, not necessarily just the term manners that you have to be signed up for manners, but actually recognize, first of all, those that actually have manners as well, not just those that have signed the document, number one. Number two is, and obviously there might be certain criteria that people have to demonstrate. Number two is possibly added to the peering policies of organizations as a requirement.
You're right, I'm going to shoot you.
Just quickly, can I just respond to Andrew's thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
Ben.
Soon. So, thank you for the undertaking to get the mess sorted out. We'll work together on it and hopefully it'll be fixed before too long. The point you make about organizations being unwilling or unable for whatever reason to you know, quote unquote, nobody actually signs anything. You know, you send an email, but quote unquote sign the thing. For me, this is about, so that I do believe that there is value to be able to give the marketing folks something to go and say about the network that is to some extent externally verifiable. It's difficult to do the external verification, but there's work going on to work out how we can improve that. But it's not clear to me what those impediments are. They don't exist for us, as evidenced by the fact that we did join. And this was not, this was not something that we did that day and then signed the document. This was stuff that we'd been doing for a very long time. There was an initiative to make that information public and to try and encourage other people to do the same thing, and so we joined up. It seemed like the right thing to do for us. It's not clear to me what those impediments are, and if they're solvable, then, then get engaged and help us solve them. Because this seems as good as any other way of forming a community around this specific set of problems, which is a very niche, specific set of problems, and is not necessarily applicable to your general internet operations community folk that you're likely to see in a SAF nog or another nog anywhere else in the world. So I'd ask you to try and assist us in fixing that, rather than just saying, this isn't going to work for me, I'm moving on.
Saul, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to comment on Anthony's remarks. I think partially when signing MANRS, and I think it's possibly an issue with MANRS, and I think I have a similar issue with iCode to a certain extent, is you're not half pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. Do you want to go to a doctor who knows only half? I mean, he knows only half of the bottom of your body, you've got a pain in the top half of your body, he's not going to be able to help you. Maybe you need to have two different logos. One, someone that's only a partial member, because let's face it, being MANRS compliant, well, for me, it's not difficult. We're there already. So either you're MANRS compliant or you're not. Yeah. And maybe that's where you need to have like a two-part or a
so I think you make
I
think you make a very fair point, actually. I will come to you, Nichelle, and that after Andrew, it'll have to be the last question because we're running out of time. In something in the CISA world, they have a similar two-tier type of approach in Europe, at least, with the TFC cert. So you had a sort of accredited cert, which you had to perform certain things to get accreditation, but you could be recognised as a functioning cert that more or less follows the best practice. It may not be fully accredited, but there was a sort of separate category for that. So maybe that is something we need to think about. I think that's a very fair point. Actually, shall I let Nichelle ask his question? And we're just running out of time a bit, so we've probably only got a couple more minutes.
I promise I'll be brief. It's Nichelle again. I just want to tell, and this was directed towards Andrew, and I guess what Ben's going to say. Andrew, thank you for the kind offer of your personal email address, mobile number, and baby pager thing. But that's not what we need, right? That's really not what we need. What we need is to improve the community. And you standing out as an example of your organization, regardless of the color of the ASN, is pointless. What we need is for you to bring your engineers to the table, your engineers to the training sessions that are being held to help grow and develop the community. So rather than just give out your Skype address, what I'd really like you to do is to, within your organization, and this is to all of you, to support initiatives that say we're doing domestic training, we're doing localized training, come out and do it. And there's people here, there are people on the panel, and I'll call them out. They're Ben, for example, who's been very supportive of this and have come out and brought their engineers to all the sessions. So we'd want to see you do that instead. No offense, but you're not here most of the time. So when you're on a plane, you're useless to us.
Okay. Let me make two comments, and I'm going to address Nichelle's first.
Okay, can they be quite quick?
They'll be quite quick.
Yeah.
Firstly, I said I'd get the issue fixed. If that means bringing people to training, I'll do that. I didn't say I was going to log into the router and fix it all myself. I said I'd get the issue fixed. And if that means education, I'm open to that. So don't read too much into something. Secondly, as to the why and what can be fixed, you've got to understand that if I sign something like this, sign it, right? The next time we acquire a company, integration takes time. Fixing things takes time. They break it. Suddenly I lose my noddy badge, and then I've got to go through it all over again. And then we acquire another one. Same thing. And it's a continual revolving cycle. So for a company that is constantly growing, constantly acquiring, constantly building, it becomes extremely difficult at a group level to commit to something like this. because you've got to understand the evolving nature of the network. And I'm not going to put our name on something that I know we may end up violating in the process of an acquisition while we fix it. It's that simple.
I can save time by addressing Andrew's point and Saul's point at the same time, because that you make a very important point, and that's kind of why I get what you were saying about there being, from a kind of a marketing value perspective, needing to distinguish between people who are doing this stuff and just, intend and are making some effort to do it. But for me, that's not actually what I care about. What I care about is someone standing up publicly saying, I care about this stuff, I'm willing to spend time and effort and resources doing something about it, and I'm willing to be held accountable for it from the community. And if that means that, it takes them, 5 years to fix one of the 4 actions, I'd like it to be faster, but it's better than having people that are just not in the room. And for exactly the same reason, in that sort of scenario, I would argue very, very strongly within the MANRS community that a company that has been MANRS compliant in all of their other operations and acquires a new operation that isn't, will need substantial amounts of grace time while they go and fix it. There should be no... I'm kind of on the fence on the subject of whether compliance checks should be integrated into this. Because on the one hand, you get incidents like, 701 leaking Google the other day, and 701 I'm pretty sure is on that list that you put up there. That's not great for the initiative. It's not great when when one of the signatories says does something that should patently been preventable if they were doing this stuff properly. But at the same time, operational problems occur, and they don't fix themselves overnight. And kicking someone out the door because of a single incident means that for all of the other incidents that are going to come down the line, you don't have them in the room, you don't have someone to talk to, and you don't have a way of fixing it. So, it's a difficult problem. But I think the scenario that Andrew was talking about should, I personally think, never even come up.
Gentlemen, final comments. We have to draw to a close, but if there's time if you want to make a final.
Yeah, I think it's a good initiative. In my opinion, honestly, whether people want to sign up for it or not, that's obviously their opinion. That's their prerogative. They need to do it for their network, and obviously we can't hold them to a standard as such, because this is it's. What's the word? It's choice. It comes down to choice, whether you want to do it or not. But yes, I think it's a good initiative. It's my opinion.
I think I'll agree with that. It's a choice. It's about education. It's a good marketing, as we mentioned. It's good marketing. Salespeople. Yes, we've got the badge. We're responsible networking people. We run a responsible network. And then it's also about consistency. And we've heard about different networks. The one's not the only one that's been a problem. We still got the stupid routing going around via London because two ISPs have an argy-bargy. It's just absurd. And it just helps people work productively together.
Yeah, so the only thing I'd like to say in closing is I did pick on Neotel, and they did kind of deserve it. But they are not by any means alone. We have the same problem, albeit to a lesser extent, with all of our decent-sized peers in the region. And I would very, very much like for us to, form a little cabal and try and get it fixed. So let's try and have that conversation in the not too distant future and not be talking about the same shit next year.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks for your participation. Thank you to Saul, to Desigan, and to Ben. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for the panels, but I'd like to thank all the panelists. We had a very, I think, informative and lively, that's the word, lively discussion. Okay, so thank you to them.